This is the Whole Hog Baseball Podcast, presented by Massage Envy, the first podcast devoted entirely to Arkansas baseball. Featuring insight from Arkansas baseball color analyst Bubba Carpenter. Here's Matt Jones.
Mixed bag of results for Arkansas this last week. They sweep Texas A&M on Thursday, Friday, Saturday at Baum-Walker Stadium. Then they go to Dickey-Stephens Park and kind of predictably play a tough game down there. They lose to Lipscomb in 11 innings. Now they'll go to Starkville this weekend and play Mississippi State. 3 weeks left in the regular season. Arkansas is a game and a half back of LSU in the SEC West standings. Still a good chance for the Razorbacks to get one of those top 4 seeds at the SEC tournament, which would give them the tournament off until Wednesday. Matt Jones with Bubba Carpenter, and Bubba, there's still so much for this Arkansas team to play for, and I want to get into these midweek results, but first, from a national seed perspective, if they just continue to win on the weekends, and you don't have to sweep your opponents, but as long as they continue to win games and maybe get into that, 17, 18 win threshold in the SEC, you got to feel pretty good, I think, about Arkansas potentially being one of those top 8 seeds.
No, I think so, Matt. I think it's funny. Everyone, they freak out about a loss on a Tuesday night in Little Rock. It really, in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't matter. What matters is what happens this weekend. We go to Mississippi State. We got to go down there and take, 2 out of 3 for Mississippi State. A sweep would be nice because we know what we have coming up with South Carolina and then, finishing up with Vandy, obviously. But, I think people put way too much they worry too much about the Tuesday nights. Like, we've already forgot about the Missouri State loss last Tuesday. That doesn't matter. We swept A&M, and that's the important thing.
Yeah, and people might hear that and they think, well, that's crazy. They won 18 SEC games last year, and they weren't even one of the top 16 seeds. The difference this year is the RPI versus last year when their RPI was, something like 41st nationally. Whenever the postseason rolled around, their RPI right now is number 6. The loss to Lipscomb only dropped them 1 spot in the RPI. They switched spots with Vanderbilt. The top 5 in the RPI right now are Wake Forest, South Carolina, LSU, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt. The Razorbacks played so many good teams, from mid-major, low-major conferences early in the year. Even Lipscomb is second right now in the ASUN. That's a team that won that conference a year ago. But, like Army, they beat Army, and Army's beaten a lot of teams since that point. Wright State, you can say the same thing about. You can say the same thing about some of those other teams that they played early in the year. And their RPI, it's going to be fine this year because now they finished with 9 games against SEC teams. 6 of those games are Vanderbilt and South Carolina, who we just mentioned are top 5 in the RPI. They're probably going to play some good teams in the SEC tournament in Hoover. So again, I just feel like if they can take care of business this weekend in Starkville, and we'll talk more about that series here in a little bit, but if they can take care of business in Starkville and maybe split one of those last 2 series with South Carolina and Vanderbilt, preferably South Carolina, because it's at home where Arkansas is playing so well, I think they're going to be fine from a postseason standpoint.
Yeah, I think so. I think Dave did a great job when he put the schedule together this year. I think kind of learned from the mistakes of last year, which, you can't really call them mistakes. You can't control. We play teams, if they have a horrible year like some of the teams did last year, there's nothing you can do about it. So, it is what it is. But fortunately, we put together a good schedule this year. RPI looks good. And so, let's just keep taking care of business and we'll be in good shape.
The problem last year was they played 10 games against in-state teams and Grambling, and none of them had good years. This year they played 3 in-state games and 1 game against Grambling, and scheduled a lot better, like Bubba said. Let's talk about Lipscomb for just a second. They lose this game 8-6 in 11 innings. Arkansas did not play well, really, in a lot of facets. Their fielding, I think, was kind of sloppy. They only had 5 hits against Lipscomb. They did draw 9 walks. But, you look at their scoring plays. They had a 3-run home run by Harold Cole in the first inning, and then in the 8th inning, they scored 3 runs on consecutive wild pitches. I don't know if I've ever seen that. There was a wild pitch where a run comes home with the bases loaded, and then another one comes home because of a throwing error by the catcher to the pitcher who's covering the plate. And then on the next pitch, he throws another wild pitch, and that ties the game 6-6. And you're sitting there thinking, okay, this is going to be another one of those crazy Dickey-Stephens outcomes where they don't play well, but they're able to squeak it out at the end, and they just weren't able to do it. But I think what I would say about playing these Tuesday night games, it didn't matter if it's in Little Rock or Springfield or Fayetteville, is that you don't play them like you play normal games. Parker Coyle started through 2 scoreless innings. Austin Ledbetter was rolling right along in the late innings through 4 scoreless innings. Zach Morris had a good outing for them last night. But you're saving these pitchers, Bubba, for the weekend. You're not playing this like you play a normal weekend game. Peyton Stovall's not playing because he's got a banged up shoulder, and they're trying to rest him for the games that matter most. Brady Slavens isn't in the starting lineup. He comes in late in the game. Same thing with Parker Rowland. And of course, you've got the other injuries going on. This just isn't the same team on Tuesday nights that you're rolling out there on the weekend.
No, it's not. And we know how mental the game of baseball is, Matt, and you're not really locked in, to be honest with you. I mean, guys want to go down to Little Rock and put on a good show for the fans, but I promise you, a lot of those guys, their brain's already on Mississippi State and what they've got to do this weekend against Mississippi State. So when it comes to this Tuesday night in Little Rock, great crowd. The fans are awesome in Central Arkansas. They show up every time we come down there. But I think you just have to look at that game and just take the positives from it. You just named them all. Parker Coyle looked good. Zach Morris, it's really good to see Zach come out and throw a couple of good innings. Austin Ledbetter, good to see him back. 4 innings didn't give up a run. You're right. And if we approach it different, we win the game. There were guys that we could have thrown that would have made a difference. There's things that Dave could have done, but it's Tuesday night, and he's getting everyone in ready for going to Mississippi State. And so I think you take the positives from it and then flush the rest and go to Mississippi State on Friday night ready to play ball.
I think one good thing that can come out of this for Arkansas is that it motivates the players. Just like when they lost to Little Rock 3 weeks ago, whenever that was in April, it motivated them the next weekend when they played Tennessee. I think when they lost to Missouri State last week, it motivated them when Texas A&M comes to town. I think that there can be a lot of power in losing these games, even if you're not playing them the same way. Texas A&M, Arkansas wins that series, all 3 games. Final scores of 7-5, 10-4, and 8-7. The first game, Arkansas just did not get it done with runners in scoring position, had 15 runners left on base. They were really bad with runners on base, runners in scoring position. But Jace Morfin comes through with a big home run in the 8th inning, right after Hunter Grimes makes maybe the defensive play of the year on a throw from left field that guns down a Texas A&M runner at the plate. Saw some metrics on that the other day, Bubba. It said that he threw it 91 miles an hour from left field. Said that his route was 95% clean, and I guess he could have run a little bit better route to the ball. But I'm sitting behind home plate, and you're sitting 2-3 booths down from me, so you're seeing it basically from the same vantage point I am. It looked like that ball was going way offline, and then somewhere between second base and home plate, it kind of made a curve back to the right, made a one hop, Roland caught it, put his glove down. It was just a great play. Probably the best defensive play I think that Arkansas has had this year when you take everything into consideration, just where they were in terms of having the injuries and obviously a tight game like that late in the 8th inning.
It's one of the best plays you're going to see all year, I think, Matt. I tell you, when the ball was hit, I don't know. I think they cheated him on route efficiency. Because he took a good route. That ball was a right-handed hitter, went down and kind of hooked it just a little bit. But he got around the ball and created an angle to home plate. I thought he did a good job of putting his body in the right position to make that throw. And then on the throw, he kind of played the slice. From the way he released the ball, his ball's going to have a natural tail to the right. And I think it's kind of like me and my driver where I can either fix the slice or I can just accept it and just try to play my slice. And I think that's what he did on the throw. And boy, it was right on the money. And the thing is, it's crazy. If that ball's 6 inches off either direction, he's safe at home plate. Great tag by Rowland, perfect position for the catcher to be in. Got rid of the ball quick in the outfield. I mean, it was a perfect play. And those are the types of plays that changed that series. I mean, without that throw, I bet we don't sweep that series.
You always hear announcers talk about how many times do you see it when you got the great defensive play and then you come back and you get a big run or a home run or something in the bottom of the inning. You've been in dugouts before. How big are those plays just in terms of momentum and confidence and motivation?
Oh, it's huge. You go back to and once again, I say it all the time, the mental game of baseball. It's just a mental lift to you. Get in the dugout, everyone's fired up. It's inevitable. You always go up to the plate, you find a way to score that next inning. The only thing that would have made that better if Hunter Grimes would have led off the inning with a double or a home run, because it seems like the guy that makes the great play is usually
Yeah.
leading off that inning. But it was just good. It was just a good moment in the game. The crowd went crazy. So I just thought it was awesome, and happy for Hunter Grimes making that play.
Hunter Holland didn't pitch well in that game. That's three of those last five outings where he has not pitched great. Has given up a lot of home runs. He's given up 7 home runs in his last 5 outings, whereas he had given up 2 in his first 6. Now I know the quality of play has improved over these last 5 games, relative to collectively what they played over the first 6. What have you seen from him? And what did you think about the decision to bring Hagen Smith in? Obviously, it worked out great, but to bring him into a tied game, it seems like maybe that's what we saw them do with Kevin Kopps a couple of years ago, where, okay, we've got our guy in on the mound, and we know he's going to shut them down, and we're going to get the runs at some point. It felt like maybe that was the thought process in the dugout.
Yeah, well, to your Hagen Smith question, I think that was awesome. Dave bringing him in, that shows how much confidence he's got in Hagen Smith. A&M's got a good lineup. I mean, they were heading into the weekend. They were second in SEC in hitting, so they've got a good lineup. But that just shows you the confidence they've got in Hagen Smith. To shut them down for 4 innings and give our offense a chance, because Dave knows that we're going to score, and so I thought it was a good move. But to your comment about Hunter Holland, the thing I see in him, Matt, his velo's down a little bit. He's not throwing. He was 93, 95 early on. He was throwing upper 80s, and that affects the pitches. If you go back and look at the game, he made a couple of bad pitches. The pitch to Thompson was an 0-2 changeup. Left it right down the middle. But when your fastball's got 3 or 4 miles an hour off of it, your changeup's not as effective. And I think that's where, had his fastball still been 93, 95, that changeup might get a rollover. But since there's not as much speed difference in there, ball stayed over the middle of the plate, didn't have any depth on it. Thompson hit it out. I think that's one of those 0-2 pitches where you can go back and look at it and say, well, maybe I should have gone with a breaking ball there, maybe backdoor cutter, two-seamer. Well, there's a lot of other options you could go to there versus the 0-2 changeup. Baseball's a crazy game. You can second guess yourself to death. I talk about the what ifs all the time. What if I wouldn't have thrown that pitch? But I think he's just in that point of the year where you get a little dead arm. I mean, he's thrown a lot of innings. I think you get a little dead arm. If I think this extra day of rest, or if Dave moves him back in the rotation a day or two, I think that's going to help him. Just give him a couple of extra days to get his strength back, and I think he'll be fine. I'm not worried about him. Hey, mentally, I know he's locked in. He finds a way to get through innings, and so I'm not worried about him. I'm just glad there's not an arm issue there; that it's more of just a fatigue.
I think Van Horn said at Swatters Club on Monday that there's a little bit of a leg injury that he's pitching through. Obviously, nothing that's keeping him off the mound. But then, like you referenced, when he was in Little Rock last night, said that they might hold him for an extra day or two at Mississippi State. It might be Saturday, it might be Sunday before you see him start. It'll be interesting to see what they do game 1 if they're not starting Hunter Holland. Brady Taggart is going to be in the rotation most likely against Mississippi State. They like starting him because they can kind of control his outings a little bit more as he's coming back from this sprain to his UCL. Had a pretty good outing against Texas A&M the other night. 20 pitches, worked around a 2-out walk, had 3 ground outs, and worked a scoreless inning. Will McIntyre comes in and throws 5 2/3 innings in relief. Probably the best we've seen Will McIntyre look since that Louisiana Tech game earlier in the year when he threw a complete game. And then about halfway through that game, it felt like we went back in time about 10, 12, 13 years, and we saw the old Dave Van Horn small ball kind of resurface. With all these struggles they're having at the bottom of the lineup, really with their 7, 8, 9 hitters, we saw a lot of sack bunts. We saw a lot of bunts where they were able to get on with singles. They were really good with their sacrifice flies this weekend, their hits and runs. They stole some bases. During the A&M series, they had 4 sack flies. They had 5 sack bunts. I think they had 2 more bunts that resulted in singles. Maybe that's how they're going to have to play with the bottom of the lineup, at least until they're able to get some of their guys back in it.
Well, part of being a good head coach is kind of adapting to your team. You can't, there's been years we've been able to set back like 2018. We didn't have to lay down a lot of sack bunts. We could wait and hit the 3-run homer. I think right now with the injuries, I think Dave's doing a great job of kind of adapting to his team, his healthy team that he's got, and really just kind of managing the game according to his players and his players' strength, and just scratching out runs any way he can. And I think when we started putting the bunts down, you could see A&M's defense. They weren't comfortable, and they're a good defensive team coming in. They were pretty good defensively. They just kind of melted down. Now,
Mhm.
part of that was us executing some good bunts. I'll tell you, the push bunt that John Bolton laid down to the right side was beautiful. You got a big lefty on the mound. Will Johnson's on the mound. He's fallen off to the third base side. If you can push bunt to the right side and make that first baseman make the decision, am I going for the ball or am I staying home? The key is just get it by the pitcher, and boy, he laid it down perfect, and that was a huge point in the game. And so I don't know, I thought it was exciting, and I'm not a big small ball guy, but Phil and I talked about it on the air. It was like, wow, this is an exciting inning, and all we're doing is laying down bunts and hitting sac flies, but it was real baseball, and it's so good to see real baseball and see the wheels turning. And I know with the pitch clock and all that, you don't see that much of that anymore because there's not time to really put on plays and do everything. But I thought it was masterful the way DVH did that, and hey, hats off to the guys for executing it.
Just good fundamental baseball, and sometimes that has been missing from the Razorbacks in the past few years. And what I mean by that is, think about last year, all the problems that they had where they had runners at third with no outs or one out, and they couldn't get them in. And now you're seeing this team really do a great job this year with their sack flies. I can't remember a year where they've had this many sack flies in quite some time.
I haven't either. And you notice if you go back and look at Georgia, bases loaded, nobody out, eighth inning, we strike out 3 times. We don't get
Hmm.
that sack fly, or just that little dribbler in infield. You look at John Bolton, the ground ball he hit to the right side with the bases loaded. That enabled with if he doesn't do that and put the ball in play, end up beating it out, get an infield hit. Peyton Stovall never hits the grand slam. I mean, it's so crazy, just the value of putting the ball in play. But you
Yeah.
see what happened at Georgia, or yeah, at Georgia, when we don't put the ball in play, we don't get that run. But this team's been really good at finding a way to get, if it's not a big hit like a double in the gap, at least it's a sac fly, just a way to get one run across, maybe even working a walk in that situation. I don't know. It's been fun watching them scratch and claw and find ways to get runs across the plate.
They beat A&M 8-7 in the last game of the series. They get up to an 8-0 lead. Cody Adcock throws 4 good innings. He can't go more than about 4 innings because they're throwing him in the midweek. He threw 45 pitches at Missouri State. Maybe he's the starter in game one at Mississippi State. You notice you didn't see him on Tuesday night, so now he's going to have a full week's rest going into Starkville. But he'd thrown 45 pitches against Missouri State. He threw, I think, 72 against A&M. Good start by him. You're seeing him really, look like the Cody Adcock that we thought we were going to see this year. He's throwing a really good slider right now. His off-speed pitches are a lot better than they were. I think he's able to work off those real well with his fastball. Uh, John Bolton had a really nice game in game three. I think he went 3 for 3, had a couple of RBI, scored a run. And the thing about Adcock and Bolton, and I'm going to segue into something about injuries and pitching here in just a second, but something about them, and I wrote about this on Sunday, is that their season stats are not good. I mean, neither of them are going to be proud to show off that stat line. But if you kind of, take a microscope to it and you look at what they've done over the last 2 or 3 weeks, it's really indicative of the type of, in-season improvement that I think you got to have for this team to go very far in the postseason. Not just this team, but any team to go very far. You gotta have those weak spots get better. John Bolton over the last 2.5 weeks, and this is not counting the Lipscomb game because I haven't recalculated the numbers, but on base percentage of like 434, I think, over that time. Cody Adcock, when you look at him, ever since he got shellacked at Ole Miss, he's come back. Granted, some of these have been in midweek games, but I think it's 3 runs over the last 13 innings for him. And so these two have really improved themselves, and I don't think they beat Texas A&M in game three without either of those guys having the type of games that they had.
No, they don't, without a doubt, Matt. And just remember, it's not where you start, it's where you finish. I try to look at as a hitter. I actually talked to John Bolton about this. He was player of the game on Saturday, and we talked about, look, just 10 at bats at a time. You take 10 at bats and you flush those 10 at bats and then you start over. That way you're not looking at the scoreboard and looking at your average and all that. You're going 10 at bats at a time. But no, it's one of those things. If you look at Cody Adcock, 4 innings right there, it's a huge 4 innings. Without him going 4 innings, we don't win that game because we run out of pitching at the end. Parker would have been left out there. Of course, you had Ben McLaughlin running back and forth from the bullpen to the dugout, back and forth. I think he made three trips back and forth to the bullpen. But, Parker Coyle was huge. I look at that whole series, and you can go back to the day before. Brady Tigert threw 1 inning. That 1 inning was huge because that enabled us to get through the next game on Saturday with Parker Coyle going an inning and 2/3. Everything that everyone did in the course of that weekend added up to us finishing the game with just enough pitching to get through the series. And that's why this the value of, and I know Dave talks about it all the time, Matt. He talks about, just 27 outs. I mean, that's it. He's counting outs from from Friday night all the way through to Sunday. He's just counting outs, and boy, that's how you have to do it, especially when you have a pitching staff this thin. So anything you can get is so important. And we talk about last night's Lipscomb's game. The thing that's disappointing to me, it's not that we lost, it's that Bybee and Fouch did not get a single out. And boy, we got to have those two guys. Those are two freshmen that are talented. They've come up big a couple of times. We need those guys to continue to play deep into the season. We're going to need those guys to step up and get it done.
Well, and the thing with both of them is that they've done it. So they can do it. I feel like with both of them, it's probably mental right now. I mean, you look at Christian Fouch, going back to the Georgia game where the Georgia had the walk-off. He started the 9th inning of that one. Now, granted, he had pitched 1 1/3 innings of that game. He had pitched earlier in the weekend and had pitched fine up until that point, but he doesn't get an out in the 9th inning against 3 hitters. Faces 3 hitters in 2 different games against Texas A&M, so that's 9. And faces 3 hitters against Lipscomb. That's 12 consecutive hitters that he's faced without having an out. It feels like it's got to be all mental with him. And then with Ben Bybee, we've seen him have some good outings this year. He even bounced back from the home runs that he gave against Georgia, pitched well against Missouri State last week. But now this is 2 straight outings where he hasn't looked like what we thought he should look like this year or at this point in the year.
Right. Well, you get to this point in the year, and I say it, these guys really aren't freshmen anymore. I mean, you're 8, 9 months into your college career. You're not really a little freshman. I mean, you should be battle tested by now. And so I don't know Christian Fouch. I haven't had a chance to talk to him very much. I talked to Ben Bybee a lot, and I really like Ben. I love his attitude, his mound presence. I mean, he doesn't seem like a kid that gets rattled. Now with Christian, I think you're right. I think it's mental. I think right now it's just having confidence. You got to go back out there, and I bet you he gets the ball this weekend at Mississippi State. He's got to get out there. There's a thing that I know in USA Baseball, I've got one of our instructors that spends some time with USA Baseball. They breathe on the rock. You come set, you breathe on the rock, you throw the pitch, and that kind of flushes the mind. And then you look at that batter and you execute that pitch. You're trying to get an out with that pitch. It eliminates all the thinking, and you repeat that over and over. He just needs something to get his mind right. And, one good inning can change you. I mean, look at Zach Morris. He's been really good his last couple of outings. Zach's a guy that we got to have. We got to have him. I mean, he was big against A&M. We need him to continue to be good. He threw a couple good innings last night. So we've got to have those guys. And I know we keep saying it over and over. It's a recurring theme. Someone's got to step up, or we need this guy to step up. But that's the nature of the game, especially with all the injuries that we've had. I still think it's amazing, Matt. Sorry to interrupt. I think it's amazing that this team, with all the injuries that they've battled through, they found a way to win this many games and put themselves in the position that they're in right now. I think it's incredible. It's a testament to the coaching staff. And it's a huge testament to the players that are out there healthy, battling and getting it done. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I agree. I think it speaks to the resiliency of the team. I think back to an interview, and I listen to all the interviews that Dave does with Phil Elson before the games on the radio network. And I think back to one, I think it was like March 7th against Army. And or maybe it was the Louisiana Tech series that weekend. But regardless, it's before SEC play starts. And Dave is saying we got to build up some wins right now because SEC play is going to be really hard. We know what's waiting on us in SEC play, a lot of really good teams. And I think if you would have asked people with the type of, the injuries that had happened to the pitching staff early in the year, that was the week where they lost Tigert for a while. It's the week where they lost Cody Frank for the season. I think if you would have asked people at that point, they would have said, hey, you know what? With everything that's happened in the pitching staff, if we can be 500 in the SEC at the end of the year, 15-15, I think you would have taken that. And now they go into they've got 9 games left with a 14-7 record. They may not get a lot above 500 with the type of teams that they're playing, or they might. But the point is that they're in a much better position than I think anybody could have dreamed that they were going to be at this point in the season. If you think back and rewind the clock about 6 or 7 weeks.
Without a doubt, man, you're 100% right there. I mean, it's incredible. I think it is. It's amazing, and like I said, it's a testament to the toughness of this team and the resiliency, and it starts with Dave at the top. It really does, and the whole coaching staff. I just think everyone's done a great job this year.
Dylan Carter, we don't know exactly what's going on there. I think you can maybe kind of read between the lines of what Dave Van Horn said Tuesday night. When he said that it's not good. The update with him is not good. Didn't elaborate any more than that. He had mentioned at Swatters Club on Monday that Carter was going to go in for an MRI. He had an MRI last week. It came back negative, as in it was a good result for him, but they wanted to get a second opinion, an MRI with the dye that goes in and reveals, any tears. And a day later, Dave Van Horn says it's not good. I think you can maybe read between the lines there, Bubba, that he's probably not going to pitch again this year, and we'll see what the severity, the extent of that injury is. But if he can't go for them the rest of this season, it almost feels like this whole year has been patching the holes. It's like, okay, Cody Frank's gone out, we're going to patch it with Dylan Carter. Brady Tigert goes out, we're going to patch it with these freshmen. Now Dylan Carter is probably out, and we're going to patch it maybe with Brady Tigert coming back. I mean, it's amazing, the mixing and matching that they're having to do with the bullpen. But with Carter, if he can't pitch again this year, you're talking about a guy that was reliably a 2-time a weekend pitcher in the SEC. How do they plug this hole if Dylan Carter can't come back? And I think for me, it starts with Zach Morris and Austin Ledbetter, who, like we've mentioned the last couple of weeks, maybe they've looked a little bit more like what we thought they were going to look like.
Well, you're right. It's you don't have one guy that can cover Dylan Carter, because he's a guy that I still love what he said in one of his post games, where he said he told DVH and Matt Hobbs, "Give me the ball whenever you want me to have it, and I'll keep it as long as you want me to have it." That's the mindset you got to have. And I loved it. I love that. I'm not quoting him exactly, but it was something similar to that. And that stuck with me. And boy, you got to have guys in that bullpen. Every guy in that bullpen should have that same mindset. And so I think if we've lost him for the year, and you're right, it doesn't sound good. It's going to take a couple guys. Zach Morris is one. Austin looked great last night. Austin Ledbetter. And here's the thing that just really sucks about it, Matt, to be honest with you. It was so exciting. And Phil and I talked about it on the air on Friday when Tigert came back. It was so good to be talking about someone coming back into the lineup. It was such a good feeling to have someone back healthy finally. It's the same when Wagner comes back, or Josenberger. It's going to feel really good to say, okay, we got this guy back. And then here we are again losing somebody. And it's just, man, it's tough. And I know it's tough on the guys on the field. It's tough on the staff. I really feel for Dylan Carter. I love that kid. He's played for me. I've got a chance to coach him. He wants the ball. He's a competitor. And boy, I feel so horrible for him, because I know how hard he's worked. to get in the situation that he's in. And man, I just hate it for him. But you know what? It's just that same theme of guys stepping up, and who's going to be the one that's going to go to Dave and say, okay, give me the ball, whenever, and I'll take it as long as you want. And we'll see who that is.
Well, based on his comments after the A&M series, it might have been Zach Morris. He said that Morris came to him and basically said, hey, don't give up on me. This is a team captain who obviously hasn't had the type of year that he had last year, hasn't had nearly the year that he thought he might have. He's pitched okay the last couple of weeks. I think there's maybe some cautious optimism about Morris because it hasn't gone well for him all year. But you think about the A&M game, I know he gave up 3 runs, but he also got squeezed out of a strike that would have ended that inning without any runs. And then he comes in and limits the damage against Lipscomb last night. It's a good outing for him, and maybe you're getting him back. Again, don't know, don't want to take too big of a leap there, but maybe Zach Morris is a key to this end of the season run. They wouldn't have gotten to Omaha last year, or gotten as far as they got in Omaha last year without him. The Whole Hog Baseball Podcast is sponsored by Massage Envy, voted the best day spa and the best massage in all of Northwest Arkansas. You can visit Mike and his staff in Tuscany Square at 2603 West Pleasant Grove Road in Rogers, or in Fayetteville at 3557 North Shiloh Drive. Massage Envy has services for everyone. MassageEnvy.com.
Massage Envy with clinics in Rogers and Fayetteville has been awarded Northwest Arkansas's Best Day Spa and Best Massage. One of the reasons is our care for athletes, both serious and recreational. We now offer rapid tension relief sessions using a high-caliber vibrating tool and total body stretch sessions like the ones used by the PGA. Both of these new services can be combined with the always popular deep muscle treatment. So whether you compete or just want to relax, there is no place better than Massage Envy.
WholeHogSports.com has the largest, most experienced staff of reporters covering sports in Arkansas. Football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, and more. You'll find it at WholeHogSports.com. The website includes up-to-minute news, daily commentaries, and award-winning photography from the staffs of Hogs Illustrated and the Democrat Gazette. For subscriptions, call 1-800-757-6277. That's 1-800-757-6277. Or visit us online today. WholeHogSports.com.
With almost 30 years in business, the Teague Law Firm can help with most family law and criminal law issues. Call James and the Teague Law Firm at 479-531-2785.
We mentioned there's 9 games left in SEC play. LSU and Vanderbilt are atop the divisions after an interesting week last week. The outcome that I think really caught my eye and had to have caught the eye of everybody, Bubba, was that Auburn went to Columbia and won the first 2 games of that series. They got up big in game 3, and South Carolina ended up coming back and salvaging a game. But Auburn's bats were incredible in that ballpark. It was at South Carolina, where the Gamecocks haven't lost a whole lot this year. They haven't lost a whole lot anywhere. Do you think it tells us more about Auburn maybe coming on at the end, or do you think it tells us more about is South Carolina maybe falling back, not going to be able to stay up there with the big dogs at the end?
I hope it's South Carolina falling back, because we're going to find out in a couple of weeks.
That's right. Next week they come to bomb.
But yeah, that was a surprise. It really was. If you look at some of the other things that happened around the SEC, it wasn't crazy like some of the crazy weekends we've seen, or as crazy, I guess you can say. But I'll tell you, it's hopefully it's South Carolina where their weaknesses are finally starting to show, and we'll find out. But Auburn had a good weekend, and I mean, we know Auburn has good players. We knew it when they were here. We just outplayed them. So, that's left to be seen.
Well, they've dealt with some injuries in their pitching staff, very similar to Arkansas. Their ace, Joseph Gonzalez, was just shut down for the week or for the year last week. He hasn't pitched since the season opener, but there was some optimism that he might be able to come back by the end of the year. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. I think the frustrating thing for South Carolina has to be that they swept Florida in their ballpark the week before, and then they lose 2 of 3 to Auburn, who's one of the the teams down in the conference some. And the big winner, I think, last week was Vanderbilt. Not only did they get their pitching staff back intact, and I want to talk about that here in just a minute, but they go back in the lead in the SEC East, and because they beat South Carolina 2 of 3 earlier in the year, they've got that tiebreaker should it come into play. It feels like Vanderbilt's really in the driver's seat in the East.
Yeah, it does. And you know what? I haven't even looked to see who. I know Vandy. We've got Vandy. I don't know who they have next week. Um, but yeah, you're right. They put
They
themselves
still
in a
got to
good
play
position.
Florida at some
Yeah.
point.
And who knows which Florida team's going to show up?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You could almost say that, I think, for any SEC team this year, maybe outside of LSU. LSU's been the team that's been, consistent in at least winning all of its series. But I mean, there have been some crazy outcomes this year, whether it be Arkansas going to Georgia and getting swept, or Tennessee sweeping Vanderbilt the way they did, or coming to Fayetteville and getting swept like they did. And you go on and on down the list. It just, there's been so much inconsistency in the league this year. I don't know if that speaks to that there's not a dominant team or not a lot of dominant teams, or that the conference is just really good top to bottom. Tennessee went to Missouri and got swept.
Yeah, I think it's just I honestly yeah, the Missouri sweep in Tennessee. I know it was the first series of the year. I scratched my head. I cannot figure that out, other than the fact that it was really cold, and maybe Tennessee's guys just they got some prima donnas on that team. Maybe they didn't like the cold weather, because it was
They
cold and
couldn't play in the
miserable
fur coat that they wear after their home runs.
Yeah.
I think if they could have taken that on the field, maybe they would have played better.
I know. But then when Tennessee limped out of Fayetteville, they go to Vandy, and I'm like, Tony's in trouble.
Mhm.
And then they go and they sweep Vandy. I mean,
Yeah.
you go figure. It's just you can't figure it out. I honestly think, I mean, there's so much talent in the SEC, and everything is so close. I mean, it's an error, missed opportunity. Um, just those little things add up, and we always say how hard it is to get a sweep in the SEC. Well, there's been a ton of sweeps. I don't remember this many sweeps. I haven't gone back and looked at the numbers. You're a better researcher than me. I'm sure you'll be able to tell me at some point, how many more sweeps, but I don't remember there ever being this many sweeps in the SEC.
There've been quite a few, and not just sweeps, but almost like inexplicable sweeps. And you think about
Right.
Tennessee, they lose in Fayetteville. Again, it's a midweek, but they lose to Tennessee Tech the couple of nights later. They haven't lost since. And I tell you, the thing that I think has turned around for Tennessee, and we saw it starting to happen on the last day when they were in Fayetteville, is that they have put Chase Burns in the bullpen, and he has become really, really good for them in that relief role, whereas he was not pitching well for them as a starter this year. And that may be the thing that's starting to make the worm turn for the Vols.
Well, okay, so look at Tennessee right now. They're ranked what? They're like 18th,
I think they're 16 in the coaches poll.
16 in the coaches poll. How would you like for them to come into a regional? Let's say they come in as a 2 seed in your regional. You got Lindsey, you got Dolander, you got Beam, and then you got Burns in relief. And you're right, Burns has been unbelievable. When he came in relief here, I watched that dude pitch. I'm like, this guy's amazing. How is his Ernie at the time was like a 10 or 13? It was some crazy. And that's a dangerous team. So I don't know. I would not want to play them in the postseason just because of their pitching alone.
They may still get a regional. They're 31-14. They're 16 in the RPI. They're now above 500 in SEC play. And you look at their schedule here. They finish out the year with Georgia, Kentucky, South Carolina. That's 3 winnable series. Especially 2 winnable series with Georgia and Kentucky the next 2 weeks. They might be able to backdoor their way into hosting a regional. But yeah, I think that if you see Tennessee coming in as the 2, it would just be like Oklahoma State watching Arkansas come in to Stillwater last year. Like, what the heck are these guys doing in a road regional? Wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. One more note here: Vanderbilt, they got their starting rotation back last week, and they've had to do some mixing and matching with guys being tired, soreness, things of that nature. But when Carter Holton and Hunter Owen and Devin Futrell have pitched for them 1, 2, and 3, they've swept every weekend that they've had this year in SEC play. And those 3 collectively have only lost 1 SEC game. That is an incredible stat, I think, for Vanderbilt pitching. And I've said all along that I think it's the best rotation in the SEC. And now they got those 3 back, and it looks like they're healthy and starting to roll again. I don't know who beats Vanderbilt right now.
Yeah, you're right. That doesn't look good. You get those guys back, because look around the SEC, Matt, at how many, you got your Friday starter, and then you got Saturday and Sunday TBA. You know, there's very few teams that are like set in a rotation right now. There's so many TBAs, especially when you come to Sunday. Just with all the injuries across the league and everything, it's crazy. But yeah, it looks pretty good for Vandy right now.
Yeah, I mean, they're the type of team that I think you would hate to see in a super regional setting. Maybe you can pick them off in a regional setting if you can beat one of those guys in game 1 or game 2, and they're having to, kind of play catch up the rest of the weekend. But in a super regional 3-game type set, it feels like it would be really hard to beat Vanderbilt right now. I think if I was putting money on anybody, and I know you're not supposed to talk about putting money down in the SEC right now with what's going on with Alabama and their whole betting scandal, and that's a whole nother story. But if I was putting money on anyone to make the College World Series, I think I'd put it on Vanderbilt right now, even over LSU, because I think I trust Vanderbilt's pitching more than I trust any other pitching staff in the league.
Well, that's probably a safe bet. Once again, we'll find out in a few weeks, how good they really are. And that's why the wins this weekend are really important.
Yeah.
And then we got South Carolina coming to Fayetteville. I mean, I feel good playing them at Baum-Walker. I mean, we're 28-3 right now at Baum-Walker, 11-1 in conference play at Baum-Walker. So having South Carolina's here is huge. If we can win that series, go into Vandy and do the best we can there. Yeah, I think we're still in good shape. But yeah, that's a tough team right now. I don't know if I'd put them above LSU. I mean, I don't know. That's such a good lineup. There's a few teams out there that are a little scary right now, but Tennessee, for me, Tennessee's just one of them that with their pitching, man, that's a scary one to see in a regional.
They feel a little bit like Ole Miss did last year, don't they? This time of year, remember we were talking about, I don't know if you want to face Ole Miss right now, and they got hot at the end of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. I said that. I was talking last night to a couple of coaches, and that's one of the things I said is, look, they remind me of Ole Miss last year. A team that they've got the talent. If they don't melt down, the thing is they have the tendency to melt down. I think it starts at the top, and yeah, I don't know. We'll see. But if they keep it together, they're a dangerous team.
I want to talk more about that home record here in just a second because I got some thoughts on that. I want to tell you that the podcast is brought to you in part by James Teague and the Teague Law Firm, which has been around nearly 30 years and was voted the best of Northwest Arkansas in 2019 and 2021. James and his father, Robert, they can help you with family law matters, including divorce, custody, child support, also with criminal law, including felony and misdemeanor offenses. If you have an estate need, James at Teague Law Firm can fill your need there too. Teague Law Firm is a full service law firm where you will talk to actual lawyers. They will call you back and give you the direct sell. You can call James and the Teague Law Firm at 479-531-2785. That's 479-531-2785, or visit them online at teague-law.com. The Teague Law Firm. If we can't help you, we'll talk baseball.
As a former Razorback pitcher, James Teague spent years closing innings. Now he's closing cases. With almost 3 decades in business, the Teague Law Firm can help with most family law issues and criminal law. Call James and the Teague Law Firm at 479-531-2785 or visit them at teague-law.com.
Want more coverage of your home team? Download the Whole Hog Sports Video on Demand app. Check out the Fan Zone and get up-to-the-minute videos, podcasts, and features on football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, and more. Search for Whole Hog Sports on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire at home. And take it with you on the go by downloading it for your mobile device in your app store. The Whole Hog Sports Video on Demand app. Get it today.
I've got some thoughts on Arkansas playing in North Little Rock, Bubba. I'm not totally against the Razorbacks going down to play in North Little Rock because I do think that there's a value to going down there and being able to showcase, your fan base in other parts of the state. And, when it's the only time you play there, you get people who come out who are going to, maybe come to the game for the only time that year. So I do think that there's a lot of value in playing down in Central Arkansas. What bugs me is when the baseball team and the basketball team go to North Little Rock and they don't put the games on TV. And it bugs me not only for the fans who, we're in 2023 and you ought to be able to watch every sporting event on TV. You can watch every Fayetteville High School football and basketball and, whatever sport on TV. And so you come to expect that you ought to be able to watch the games in college the same way. But there was something that happened Tuesday night that I think really drives home the need for having these games televised or streamed or whatever the case might be. And it's the fact that Lipscomb had a home run that may have not cleared the fence. The thought was that it may have hit in the yellow stripe at the top of the outfield wall. Therefore, it would have been in play. And when you're talking about a game that goes 6-6 into extra innings, that's a big play in that game that potentially could have been reversed with replay. Now, you got to have the cameras that catch it. And, you know how that goes. You got to have a good, indisputable replay review. But the fact that they voluntarily put themselves in the dark ages and play these games without TV in North Little Rock, I think has got a potential to really hurt the baseball team. It's got the potential to hurt the basketball team if there's a controversial play, that were to end an outcome at Simmons Bank Arena right next door. And these are the little things that I think can add up at the end of the year that might be the difference between you being the 8 or the 9 seed, or you being a 16 seed that gets to host a regional, or the 17 seed that has to go on the road somewhere. I just don't understand why in this day and age, teams would voluntarily put themselves in a position where you don't have replay review when that's become such a big part of sports.
Well, I agree, Matt, and I think it's 2023. It looks like to me that's something we can figure out, before we roll into town. And I get it. It's a money issue, but there's a way to get it done. Whether there's a sponsorship, I'm pretty sure if they put it out there and they said, okay, it's going to cost, X amount of money to have this game on TV, there's a lot of money in Central Arkansas. Someone's going to step up. And look, this is a game that it's important for the people of Central Arkansas. I do a lot of stuff. I do like 103.7 The Buzz. I love Justin Acree, Wes Moore. Sully. I love Steve Sullivan a lot. I do some stuff on the TV with him. The fan base in Central Arkansas, they love it when the Razorbacks come to town. They deserve to get the Razorbacks in town, but that needs to be figured out, the TV side of it. Now, is that going to make a difference in the grand scheme of things, whether that ball went over the fence or not? It could. Like you said, if it comes down to a point or two at the end of the year in RPI, and maybe that loss takes us out of a regional or super regional, then it really sucks that that's something that could have been avoided. And I don't know. I wish they'd figure it out. I don't know. I'm always one of those says 2023, figure it out. There's a way to get it done. Someone needs to figure it out and get it done.
Yeah, Dave Van Horn was asked about that play last year, and here's the quote. I'm pulling it up. He said, "There's no review here, and that's another problem. We would have asked to challenge that." So again, I think you can sense some frustration, the fact that these games are not on TV, and I think they ought to be. Again, like you said, it comes down to money. Bob Holt did a great story where he interviewed Hunter Yurachek about this back in December when the basketball team played down at Simmons Bank Arena. But Yurachek said, quote, "It's an unavoidable challenge right now as long as we continue to play there in North Little Rock." In that same story, he extolled the value of playing games in North Little Rock. So I don't think they're going away, but I think something has to be figured out about how to get these games televised, not only for the people who can't be at the game, the 9,300 for baseball or the 15,000 or so for basketball, but really for the players who are in the arena, so that you can have these replay reviews on plays that can be really beneficial to the outcome of your season one way or the other. I just think that that should be a priority as they move forward and play games in North Little Rock. Peyton Stovall did not play against Lipscomb. Like we said, he's dealing with a shoulder injury. They think he'll be ready to play against Mississippi State. Given what you know about this, Bubba, and he's been dealing with it for about 6 to 8 weeks, we saw him really kind of grimacing in pain on some of his throws to first base late in that game against A&M on Sunday. But it looks like this is probably affecting his swing too. I mean, how much does an injury to that front shoulder affect you as a hitter?
Well, it can. I mean, most hitters are more backside guys, but you still feel it when you start that swing or when you finish the swing. A lot of times, when you're talking about your lead arm, it's at the end of the swing. If you swing and release through the ball, it really can affect you. And people don't realize that. Just the smallest little thing can affect a baseball swing. You talk about the frames of a camera. If one frame gets off in that swing, it's a difference in a line drive to left center or pop up to left field. And so it can have an effect on, but what I see, it looks like to me, there were a couple plays that Peyton uncharacteristically didn't field on the transfer. It looks like he was trying to get rid of the ball quicker so he didn't have to throw it as hard, and it affected his transfer on a couple balls in the A&M series. And, I mean, he's been great, and he's battling through it. He's a tough kid. I talk to him about it all the time. Like, hey, how's your arm feel? And he'll kind of give me that look, but he's not going to make excuses, but he's going to find a way to get through it. But it can affect you. And once again, I hate to go back to the mental thing, but man, little things like that can affect you mentally, and it's crazy. You just got to power through it and figure out a way to get it done. I always say find a way, and you just got to find a way to get it done.
Van Horn talked this week about other injuries to Jared Wagner and Tavian Josenberger. Wagner, of course, has been out since mid-April, early to mid-April with that broken left thumb. The thought is that he is going to get the pins out of his thumb next Monday, and Van Horn said that it basically comes down to that point. Can he tolerate the pain? And so there's a chance, it seems like, that he's going to be in the lineup for the South Carolina series, which I think was maybe the best case scenario after he had the surgery a few weeks back. And I think with what we know about Jared Wagner, he can probably tolerate the pain, and it would be a surprise, I think, unless there's some sort of setback in the next few days, if he's not in the lineup for the South Carolina series.
Yeah, I think so. And we talked about just the mental boost of having Brady Tygart back last weekend. I think he was a huge mental boost to that bullpen. I think having Jared Wagner back is a huge mental boost to this lineup. And boy, it'll be so good to have him back in there. And I tell you what, though, Ben McLaughlin's been great. He's technically the guy that really kind of stepped up and took the place when Wagner went down. But Ben's done a great job, so we still got to figure out a way to get Ben in the lineup. But I don't know. I think just having him back, it's hard, though, when you haven't seen a pitch in a while. I've been through it where you've been out for, 20, 30 days, and you step back in a lineup. If you're doing your work on the side and you're tracking pitches when they do their bullpen, you're mentally tracking pitches, you can come back. You can come back in that lineup and get back and get your timing back pretty quick. And I think Jared's a tough kid. I think he's going to be back in there ready to go.
Josenberger might be back for the South Carolina series, but it sounds like it's more likely that he'll be back when they play Vanderbilt the following week. I was talking to somebody the other day. They said that he's doing about 5 hours of treatment per day on this hamstring. And so, he's really, doing his best to get back in the lineup. But, when you got a runner like Tavian Josenberger, the hamstring is one of the worst things that you can injure.
It is. And I think we talked about it last week, Matt. I pulled a hammy before the All-Star break one year, was out a few weeks, came back. And I tell you what, it hurt me the whole year. I just never was right again. I wasn't 100%. I was probably 80, 85% at best. They did everything they could do it. I spent hours in a training room before the game and then after the game. And then during the game, I had so much wrap, and I had a sleeve on it. I had atomic bomb back in the day was what they did. They'd rub that atomic bomb on it, put a sleeve on it, and try to get through the game. But it bothered me the whole season. So I hope Tavian doesn't come back too quick. Make sure that things, and look, he doesn't have to be 100%. I know. I think we were talking about it. Even if he comes back and he's just 80%, but Tavian can't play the game 80%. I don't think that's in his DNA. I think when he's in there, he's 100% or nothing. And so if he comes back too soon, I'm afraid he's gonna hurt that thing again, and then be down for the season. So hopefully we can be smart with that and get him back in there in the right time and make sure he's healthy.
If Josenberger and Wagner can come back and be as consistent as they were before they got injured. And I know it's a tall ask when you haven't played for as long as they have, but if they can, and you've got Jace Borfin coming along the way that he's been over the last couple of weeks, and you got Caleb Cali hitting like he did, I mean, you got to feel really good about that first 5, 6, 7 in your lineup, the potential that they can have offensively. Cali, I want to mention this, in the month of April, he finished the month of April hitting .431. I don't have the home runs or the RBI, but it was quite a few of both. But batting .431, he came into the month of April batting 200, Bubba. He went out of the month of April batting 317. And so over the course of however many games that was, somewhere around 18 maybe, he raises his batting average by 117 points during the time of the year when most guys, their batting average has fallen off.
Yeah, I mean, look what he's doing in SEC. It's amazing, his SEC numbers. And, I say Ben McLaughlin took his place, but I think Caleb Cali actually going into that 3 hole has been huge for this Razorback lineup. I mean, he's he's put the ball in play. He hasn't chased a lot of pitches, limited his strikeouts, had some huge hits for us. Man, he's just been big. Plus, he's played good defense at third base, which, in my opinion, they go hand in hand. When you're hitting better, your defense always improves. It doesn't matter what age you're dealing with. But Caleb's been huge in there. Just watching him, and look, it's hard when you get off to a start like that to battle through it. But he put that bad start behind him, and boy, he's been great for us.
I like what Arkansas looks like, especially 3-4-5 with Wagner, Cali, and Borfin, if it works out that way, whenever they're able to get their lineup back together. The production from the 8 and 9 hole I thought was kind of interesting last week against Texas A&M, and we mentioned some of the things they did, bunting wise, but Parker Rowland and John Bolton, all of a sudden it hasn't been that dark hole that maybe it was there for a few weeks before the A&M series. Do you think they can continue to have the type of production they had last week? And how much do you think the fact that maybe they've shown their hand with what they were doing with bunting, do you think teams maybe start to prepare for that a little bit more? And do you think that this is something that was a one weekend thing with A&M, or do you think it's something we might see from that spot in the lineup moving forward?
No, I think we might see it, and I hope we see it. And look, even if the thing about the bunting game, if it's coming. A&M knew we were bunting in several situations, but we put pressure on them and we forced them to make a play, and they couldn't do it. And Moss is not he's a really good hitter. Moss isn't a good first baseman. He butchered a couple plays at first. Now a good first baseman takes those plays away. It works better with the pitchers on communication, but I think we'll see it. I think we're going to see it a little bit more going away going forward. If the situation comes up, Dave's going to do it to get that runner moved over or to get that runner in from third. And I think it's smart, and I love it. And look, as far as swinging the bat, I think John Bolton's coming a long way. I think he's starting to feel it. I talked to him before the Georgia series, said he was feeling better, and you can see his at bats getting better. He had a big bases loaded base hit to right field against A&M. It was a 0-1 pitch. It was a slider away, kept his nose on the ball, drove it to right center. That's the same pitch early in the year he was pulling off of and either missing it or just dribbling it back to the pitcher. So I think he's coming along, and I like Parker Rowland. He's a smart kid, understands what the pitcher's trying to do to him. I don't think he's an easy out. When he gets up there, he battles you, and I think he's going to have some big hits for us late in the year.
We don't know what the starting rotation is going to be at Mississippi State. We touched on this a little bit earlier. We think Hunter Holland may be moved back in the rotation. Obviously, Brady Tigert is probably going to start a game. It really comes down, I think, to what do you do with game one? I mean, do you start Brady Tigert in game one and then piggyback off of that? I don't know what they're planning for Mississippi State, but I do think it's kind of interesting. If there's 1 week, I think, to be figuring out your pitching issues, if you will, it's this weekend at Mississippi State, because they're having a ton of issues with their pitching too. They come into this series with a 9.82 ERA in SEC games. That's over 2 points higher than any other team in the SEC. A&M is 13th at 7.51. And now Mississippi State comes into this weekend. They fired their pitching coach, Scott Foxhall, earlier in the week. The sacrificial lamb, I guess you will, for what's gone on in Starkville since they won the national championship 2 years ago. He's the greatest pitching coach in the country when he's rolling Landon Sims out in Omaha, and now all of a sudden, he's the problem. It's interesting to me what's going on at Mississippi State. It really reeks to me, Bubba, of I think Chris Lemonis might feel the walls closing in a little bit there in Starkville. There's a lot of pressure, I'm sure, to make a change there because of what's gone on the last 2 years. And this might be the way that the coach says, hey, look, I'm trying my best to fix the problem. What do you think about what's going on in Starkville and Arkansas walking into a situation this weekend where you've got a team where things obviously are not going very well?
Well, we need to take advantage of that. And if you look at their numbers, Matt, you just said it. The 982 ERA, but I go over here and I look at 172 innings, 226 hits. That's a lot of hits you've given up. The league hitting 309 against your staff. I mean, that's
Mhm.
not getting it done at all. Now, I don't know if it's the pitching coach's fault or pitchers just going out and executing pitches. They can coach them up all you want, but when they get out on the mound, those guys, they have to bow up and find a way to get it out, and they're just not doing it. I just think it's crazy to me. You look at Duty Noble, they get their fans come and show up. It's a beautiful ballpark. I just don't know how a team can go from the penthouse to the poop house that quick, and I just don't understand it. I don't know if it's a coaching, or I don't know what it is. But yeah, something's not right there. But to your point about it's a good time to experiment a little bit. Yeah, it's a pretty good time. I mean, Mississippi State still, they're in the middle of the pack hitting. They're like what, seventh, eighth in the league in hitting 264 as a team. They're going to score some runs. And if you look at what they did against Tennessee, they played a
Mhm.
couple competitive games. They lost the first night 7-8 on Friday. They lost 8-12, 12-8 on Saturday, and then they got blown out on Sunday. But first couple of games were competitive games that were kind of back and forth. So anything can happen there. But yeah, I think it's a good weekend to kind of experiment, because we definitely want our pitching staff in order when we get into next weekend with South Carolina coming to town.
These are the numbers that jump out to me about Mississippi State. They lead the SEC in the most walks allowed, 255. They have thrown the fourth highest total of wild pitches, 43. And when it comes to hit batters, only Georgia has hit more batters than Mississippi State's 52. So the stats suggest that they are a team that's going to put a lot of runners on base. And I think this maybe fits into Arkansas's repertoire a little bit, if you will, because Arkansas has been really good this year about taking pitches and making pitchers work.
No, I think it's a perfect matchup for us, because we've done a really good job, like you said, of staying in the zone. We don't chase a lot of pitches. We take what they give us. If they're going to give us a walk, we're going to take it. We're going to pass the chain to the next guy and let him get it done. And we've just been very opportunistic, with our lineup this year, and we've done a really good job of just finding a way to get on first base, and that's impressive. Phil had a stat this year where he gave me a stat early in the week where our leadoff hitters, our on base percentage for our leadoff hitters is 463,
Mm.
which is just a crazy number. That's our leadoff guy getting on, and it's pretty impressive. That number alone, we're by far ahead in the SEC, and in getting that leadoff guy on, and you know how important that is. Just get him on base, and then you can make things happen from there. So yeah, but yeah, you look at Mississippi State's pitching numbers, and wow, they're pretty bad in every category, to be honest with you. So hopefully we'll
Mhm.
go down there and score some runs and make things happen.
They've got some players who are pretty capable position wise. I think Colton Ledbetter, he's going to be a high round draft pick this year. He transferred over from Samford. It's interesting how Samford's been populating some of these teams in the SEC West the last couple of years. Remember DeShera last year at Auburn? He came from Samford. Hunter Hines, I think, is their big bopper in the middle. Obviously, 21 home runs. He had 2 or 3 against Tennessee last week. Took advantage of playing in that bandbox in Knoxville. But I mean, those two 322, 325 hitters. Dakota Jordan's another one who we've seen in the past. Can really hit for him. I don't think offense has been an issue for him, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if you're looking at another weekend where you might have to score quite a few runs to win these games.
Yeah, I think so. And a lot of it comes down to our pitching. I think we're going to score. I think we're going to make things happen offensively. It comes down to our pitching staff. Can we limit the damage with their lineup? Because they got some guys that can swing it. They got some veteran guys, but that's just life in the SEC.
One of the pitchers they're going to see this week, don't know if he'll start or if he'll pitch in relief, but he's pitched quite a bit this year, is a freshman named Gerangelo Sanja. And he pitches from both sides. You remember the guy, and he actually pitched at Baum several years ago, but he went into the minor leagues and they actually had to make a rule where you have to commit before each at bat which side you're going to pitch from. He had one of those 6-finger gloves, and he would just turn around, depending on who he was going to face. But it's the same type of pitcher. He's a switch pitcher. I think he throws about 93 from the left side, about 96 from the right. It's going to be kind of interesting to watch how Arkansas approaches that this week.
Okay, so on that rule that they had to put in for the pitcher, do they have that in the SEC? Like, can you switch? Do you have to declare?
I think you have to declare before the at bat.
You do. I didn't know if there was a rule in the SEC or not, because I know MLB did not have a rule, and it was kind of funny. If you can go back and watch that clip where they went from left to right, and the batter, it was a switch hitter he was facing. So yeah, they had to put in a new rule there. But in that specific game, I remember watching it. They ended up making the hitter bat right-handed against him, throwing right-handed, and he ended up striking out, and he wasn't real happy about it. So for whatever reason, they made the batter, pick which side he was gonna hit from. So anyway, but you look at his numbers, Sanjay, on Sunday, he must have picked the wrong arm on Sunday versus Tennessee, because he went 1 inning, 3 hits, 6 runs, 4 walks. So he wasn't very effective. So maybe he needs to flip and try the other arm against the Hogs.
But it's interesting, just the strategy that comes into that, because like you've got, and I know Josenberger's not going to play, but I'm just going to use him as an example this year. He seems like he's a lot more comfortable from the left side. Or you got Parker Rowland, another switch hitter. It seems like he's more comfortable from the left side. And so I got to feel like you're looking at these, when you've got this particular pitcher on the mound, you're looking at the matchups and you're looking at, okay, we would turn him around right, but then on the other hand, you're a coach that's trying to plan for a certain pitcher. For instance, I think they're going to maybe platoon Hunter Grimes and Mason Neville against Mississippi State. We saw that a little bit against Texas A&M, but then Neville never got an at bat because of an injury to A&M starting pitcher. They brought in a left-hander, and that's who they wanted Grimes facing. It's amazing to me how the strategies work, and it's like chess between these coaches when this particular pitcher's on the mound.
Well, I think it's important for Dave to mix up his lineup. Don't put too many lefties in a row, too many righties. I think you just really mess with the kid, without sacrificing your lineup, but go, make sure that you've got a righty mixed in, then go lefty, and then mix another righty back in, and kind of shake the lineup up and make that guy switch arms back and forth. Now, I haven't watched him pitch yet. I've read about him. I've seen videos, but I haven't seen him actually pitch. So it's going to be interesting to see how Dave manipulates the lineup, if he even does at all. He may just say, here's my guys, get us out, or I would think what they'll do is they'll go look at the numbers and they'll say, okay, where is this guy better? Is he better from the left side? Is he better from the right? And whichever side he's the least effective, I think that's where Dave's going to set the lineup. But who knows? At the end of the day, it's an SEC weekend, and it changes from week to week. Guys got to go out there and get on the mound and execute, and we got to do our job at the plate. Doesn't matter if he's throwing lefty or righty.
One more thing that jumps out to me about Mississippi State is just, I'm looking through their pitchers here. These are guys who we've seen pitch really well for them in the past. I mean, I'm looking at Cade Smith. I'm looking at Parker Stinnett, Casey Hunt, Logan Forsythe. These are all pitchers who have had a lot of success for them before. It kind of baffles the mind a little bit why it's not going better for Mississippi State on the mound.
Well, and that might be why you see the pitching coach getting being the sacrificial lamb, because they got to blame it on something. But when you have guys that have had so much success in the past, and then this year they're not getting it done. I mean, they were getting it done last year under the same pitching coach. So I don't know. I don't know what happens there. I don't know if. You and I talked before about winning a national championship, and then kind of that edge is gone, and they don't have that same fire. The coach, it affects the coaches more than the players. They've got that national championship. So, hey, let's just roll the balls out there and go play ball. I don't know. I don't know if that's it or not. It's really hard to figure out. But, we've seen guys do it in the past. We've seen guys have a really good year and then come back the next year and scuffle a little bit. I mean, look at Zach Morris. Last year he was coming out of the bullpen against Ole Miss with the bases loaded in a World Series, semifinal game, and getting it done. And then he struggled this year, but he's starting to get it together now. So, I mean, it's so mental. It's just hard to put your finger on it.
And so much is focus to the pitching, the ERA, those types of stats. But one other thing that I think gets overlooked a little bit on both sides, Mississippi State only fielding 963. They're 964 in SEC games. Arkansas in SEC games is fielding 985. Only Vanderbilt fields it better at 986. You talk about why Arkansas is 14-7, or why Mississippi State's got the record that it has in the SEC. The fielding, that can be the make or break thing between wins and losses a lot of times.
Oh, absolutely. 964 is a bad number. We look at A&M came in here, and they didn't field well against us. They only made a few errors, but they made a lot of mental errors where we were putting pressure on them constantly on the base paths, and they just made mental mistakes. And Tennessee came in to Baumwalker, and I don't know if it's the Baumwalker magic or what, but Tennessee just kicked the ball around all weekend. Their defense was terrible. So yeah, you're right. If that 964 number, that's not a very good number. So I think if we go up there and we just put pressure on them and put the ball on play, make them make plays, I think we're gonna be in good shape. As a pitcher though, Matt, it's hard to pitch when your defense is just kicking the ball around behind you. I mean,
you don't have confidence in them.
Yeah, I pitched back in the day, and it can be a little frustrating. So maybe that's part of it, and some of it is plays that aren't necessarily errors, but they're just plays that SEC guys should make that they're not making, and that can have an effect on your pitcher's mindset too. Instead of saying, "Okay, I'm going to try to get this ground ball right here and get a double play," they're going to be like, "Oh, well, how about I just try to strike this guy out?" And then it just kind of changes the mindset of a pitcher.
You might not see it so much this weekend because they had to pitch obviously in the midweek, but I think moving forward, not playing these midweek games is really going to help their pitching staff on the weekend, the depth and everything. But I do want to make one point that I think against Lipscomb, they did a pretty good job of preserving their pitching, it felt like, to get them ready for this weekend in Starkville. So I'll be interested to see how that all plays out this weekend.
Yeah, I think you're right. And Dave knew going in, this is what I've got to do to get these guys ready. He could have left Parker Coyle out there. Parker was dealing, but we're going to need Parker this weekend. The same with Zach Morris. He could have left Zach out there. He could have left, he could have thrown Austin. I mean, Austin was up to 55 pitches. He's a strong kid. He could have gone more. But the whole goal is to get these guys ready for this weekend. I'll tell you, I'm just glad it's not a Thursday game. I'm glad we're starting the series on Friday. I think that extra day of rest is huge for us. But moving forward, not having to worry about that Tuesday game. I hate not having a Tuesday game because I look at all the guys on the bench that needs at bats. I look at like Jason Jones, Peyton Holt, Mason Neville, those guys that need the at bats. And then I was saying some of the pitchers that need to come in and get some work in, but right now they're going to get their plenty of work in. But I really look at the position players and think, wow, it's unfortunate for them because they're not going to get the ABs now. But more importantly, we got to get the pitching staff healthy.
One more note on that thought. While we were recording the podcast, Dylan Carter announced he is having Tommy John surgery. It's something that we suspected was going to happen. Just didn't want to really go there earlier in the podcast. You don't want to say that unless you've had confirmation. He now says that he's having Tommy John. Tough deal for Dylan Carter because it's not going to affect him just this year. You have Tommy John this late in the season. It's probably going to affect him for next year too.
Yeah, you're right. And boy, I hate it for Dylan. I just do. I mean, like I said, I've coached him. I've been around him. I know his family. I know how passionate they are about baseball, about Razorback baseball. So, I feel for him. But you know what? He's a tough kid. He's going to start that rehab process. And I bet you, I actually texted Dylan and just said, look, you still haven't thrown your best pitch. You're going to come back from this thing bigger or better, stronger, and he's still going to be a force somewhere down the road. So I think I just hate it for him though, because boys, I know how hard he's worked to put himself in this position that he's been in for us right now. He's been huge for us. Without Dylan Carter, we can take several wins,
Yep.
SEC wins off the board without Dillon. I promise you.
I agree. I think about the Alabama game that he pitched in, the Tennessee game that he pitched in. There have been some others. This is Dylan's tweet, and I think this tells you all you need to know about him as a person and his teammate. He said, quote, "This season has been nothing short of amazing, and our team's season isn't over yet. I'll be the best teammate and supporter as we finish up the season and begin our run to Omaha."
Yep, that's Dillon right there.
So tough news there for the Razorbacks. Dylan Carter going to be out for the rest of this year as he announces on his social media that he's got a tear to his ulnar collateral ligament. And that's obviously the injury that causes Tommy John surgery. He's going to be the second Razorback who's going to be out for the year with a UCL tear. Of course, that's what happened to Jackson Wiggins too. It's happening all across the SEC. I've heard people ask, why is this happening so much at Arkansas? You go look across the SEC. There's UCL tears, UCL sprains, elbow injuries all across this league. And Bubba, I mean, you coach travel baseball, you coach young guys. Do you think it's something that's happening at the younger ages that maybe the wear and tear is greater now when they get to college?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't know, Matt. I'll tell you, I go out there and I get frustrated some weekends because I'll see a kid out there on the mound. I'll watch him throw, everything in U-Trip baseball is off of innings, which is stupid. It's absolutely stupid. We count pitch counts in our organization. We go by pitches, and we're pretty strict on the amount of pitches we throw. Kid in USSSA baseball, and without getting into a big long discussion on it, because people they want to talk Razorback baseball. You can throw 3 innings on Saturday. You can come back and throw 5 on Sunday. You're allowed 8 innings on a weekend. Well, I'll tell you what, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old kid can throw a whole lot of pitches in 8 innings. They don't count pitches, and I get it. U-Trip says they can't do it. That it's too hard to chart pitches. But the coaches ought to do it. We actually do a great job of monitoring pitches. But I think there's a few cases where kids get overthrown. I think it's always happened. I think today in social media, we're more aware of everything else that's going on, all the injuries and everything. And then the main thing, Matt, is, I mean, think of it. Kids are bigger, they're stronger, they're throwing harder than ever. And something's got to give, and it really comes down to that UCL ligament. I know that Matt Hobbs, they take every safety precaution they can. They've got a way of monitoring stress on a pitcher's arm, and if there's something they're doing mechanically that puts extra stress on the arm, they can fix it. And that they can pinpoint this is where something's going to go wrong. They can fix the mechanics to take pressure off of that part of the body. And I don't know. I just think it's guys throwing harder. They're bigger, stronger, throwing harder, and something's got to give.
Well, I think one thing is that a lot of times Tommy John's happening too, just some of the most prominent pitchers. But I also think that they're prominent because of the spin rate that they're able to generate. And I think that spin rate, obviously you're putting more torque on your elbow, and I think it's going to potentially hurt your elbow more than the guys who aren't spinning the ball as hard. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but that's just a theory that I have, and maybe that's why you notice all these Tommy Johns, is because it's really the prominent guys a lot of times who get nicked by this.
Yeah, but look at your prominent guys, Matt. Your prominent guys are the guys that generate more arm speed. It's typically your guys that throw harder. I mean, you don't see a lot of guys throwing 85 getting Tommy John surgery. It's your guys throwing 95 with the spin rate. They go hand in hand. But I mean, I understand your point. I don't want to be a smart aleck. I'm just saying that they go hand in hand. It's your elite guys at the top of the rotation that are throwing hard, spinning the ball. Those are the guys get hurt, and just something's got to break down. And it's all over baseball. Throwing a baseball is an unnatural motion. It is. It's very unnatural. So something at some point it's gonna break down. And I don't know that you can blame it on youth baseball overuse. I think sometimes you probably can predict. I can watch a kid with bad mechanics and say, hey, he's going to hurt his arm at some point. There's 100%. It's like if you ride a motorcycle, it's not when you're going to wreck or if you're going to wreck, it's when you're going to have a wreck.
Yep.
At some point, you're going to have a crash.
Yeah.
And I can watch a kid with bad mechanics and I can say, okay, he is going to hurt his arm. He's 16 right now. He's throwing that way. Fix it or he's going to hurt his arm. Now, there's guys with perfect mechanics that hurt their arms. I mean, it's just an unnatural motion and you can't do anything about it.
Let's take off our white coats and our stethoscopes, put our ball caps back on. There's people a lot smarter than us who are going to figure this out. Arkansas and Mississippi State this weekend. Game time, 6 o'clock on Friday, 6 o'clock on Saturday. They'll play an afternoon game on Sunday. The second game will be on ESPN2. The other ones will be streamed by SEC Network Plus. You come to wholehogsports.com throughout the weekend for our coverage from the games. And we'll be back next weekend with a podcast to talk about the Razorbacks and the Bulldogs and look ahead to what promises to be a big series against South Carolina. Arkansas 28-3, by the way, at Baum-Walker Stadium. I meant to touch on this earlier about Bubba. 28-3 at Baum-Walker Stadium. It's the second best start they've ever had there, just behind a 29-3 start in 2018. And we saw how good that team was at home. If they can just keep winning, they can stay at home during the postseason, then that's obviously, it feels like, going to be their best road to get into the College World Series. But hope you'll join us next week on the Whole Hog Baseball Podcast. For Bubba Carpenter, I'm Matt Jones. Have a great weekend, everyone.
The proceeding has been a production of wholehogsports.com. Look for our latest podcasts on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast store. And visit us anytime at wholehogsports.com for the latest news and commentary.